to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, welcome, happy new year. Thank you for coming out on this icy night for our meeting. We're going to start with the approval of the minutes. Pete, would you do that, please?
Sure. Number 2, approval of minutes. Resolved on the recommendation of the superintendent, Board of Education hereby accepts the minutes of the December 20th, 2017 regular meeting and the January 3rd, 2018 workshop meeting.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Ed. The January 3rd workshop meeting was the bond committee advisory who met with the Board of Education and the directors and principals of our district. We had a very productive meeting. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Now I turn it over to Mr. Brasdale for his report.
Board, join me down below, please. Superintendent's message. Thank you, everyone, for coming. It's nice to see 4 members of our at-large bond committee here as well this evening. We begin part 1 of our budget presentations. Before we do that, my message is dedicated to the fund balance, which is a natural lead-in into the budget discussion. What drives the fund balance? What drives our current fund balance? First thing you should know, I mentioned in the past, if you've been here, 5 years ago the district was audited. It's pretty commonplace that a district is audited every 5 years. When we were audited in 12-13, we started spending down the fund balance, which they asked us to do. And 2 years later, we received a letter from the state saying, now you are at risk fiscally at risk. We did what they asked to do, and now we're fiscally at risk. So we kept spending the fund balance, we projected out, and then we had our audit just recently, 16-17, which is the same thing they're recommending, to spend down the fund balance. Now, why would they tell us to spend it down? Where is our fund balance? Well, let's look at some factors in why we're where it is. Last year and the year before, we experienced savings in a lot of these different areas. Savings in special education transportation. Lower rates came in for TRS, teachers retirement, ERS. Health insurance, we predict a certain amount of money. It came in less. Oil and electric came in less than we projected. You can never understand what those prices are going to be at any time. Retirees, we were fortunate enough to have 7 last year, which is quite a savings to the district. Differential between the retiree's salary at $140, a new salary of $53. Quite a bit of difference. The TANs and the tax anticipation notes, the interest came in less than we anticipated. In operation and maintenance. So we had a lot of savings that were a result of prices coming in less than we anticipated. Always better to plan in your house, have money to pay for it, and have money to pay for emergencies, things that go wrong, than not to be, or be cut to the bone and just have enough to pay for daily expenses. You never know what's going to go wrong. And keep in mind, you have the 2% tax cap. Another factor driving the fund balance is, by law, you're allowed to have 4% in your fund balance. As Steve pointed out at the December meeting, that this is hardly enough to run a district, maintain your programs at 4%. State legislators have understood that this is an issue. That's why they talk about raising that 4% to 6, 8, some have even mentioned 10%. We'll see if that happens in the next few years. Now, recently, yesterday, after I prepared this, Cuomo's proposals came out. So I'm going to quickly share that with you. As we engage in our public budget meetings. The Board of Regents and New York Education Department both recommended a $1.6 billion increase in school aid for this year to maintain all of the programs. They wanted $1.25 billion to go to fund foundation aid, and major state education organizations said $1.5 billion would be needed to maintain current services. The 2017-18 budget for this year, Cuomo increased education aid 4%, which was $1.1 billion. Now, you have to understand what foundation aid is. Foundation aid is distributed to districts based on student need, the community's wealth, and other factors. And obviously, we are an average wealth district. Foundation aid favors very low-income districts, poverty districts. And a portion of foundation aid must be used by high-need districts for services such as mentoring, medical dental care, and summer programs. So instead of the recommended amount above, what Cuomo came out with yesterday is what he's going to do is increase aid to schools by $769 million. Nearly half the increase, $338 million, would go to foundation aid. I just pointed out that doesn't really benefit Mount Sinai. Today we found out, Linda found out today, what we'd be getting, our increase in foundation aid bears, it's all true, $31,000 increase to Mount Sinai, which is very little, $31,000. Again, we're average wealth district, we're not low wealth. So $15 million will go to expand pre-kindergarten programs. We don't have pre-kindergarten. Mainly in high-need communities. Assistance to districts with a large number of ELL students. We're not that. And we don't have many homeless students here. So the foundation aid piece really doesn't help us. Again, we got the figure today, $31,000. So just keep that in mind as a factor as well as we go into this vote. Now, state aid, what is it going to be? We don't really know until March. You've got to understand, in a moment Linda will present the 5-year plan. When we go into this is a lot of predicting and a lot of guessing, and Linda has a track record over the last few years to get us through safely and project out. As tonight you'll see that we're safe for a number of years to come, even with some of these things that aren't so positive. Now, our fund balance is $9.9 million. Due to a lot of the factors I've told you, showed you earlier, costs coming in less, and also monitoring the budget. Linda stopped spending a little past mid-year because anything that was important to our principals, administrators, should have been ordered by now. And she stopped suspending. That money goes back to fund balance. So what we're going to do, this is kind of timely because Ed will be presenting a bit about the bond report. We have a lot of things in this district that need repair in all 3 buildings. And if we voted on a bond tomorrow and approved that bond, it would still be about 2 years out to have that work done. There are things on that list, priority 1 items, that cannot wait 2 years. Cannot. One I'll tell you about quickly is the roof in the high school. Cannot wait. Actually, the whole thing should be replaced, and at least the main area that where 2 wings are getting saturated every time it rains, then you have freezing and thawing like we have right now, creates a problem. So we predict to repair the worst areas that have to be done immediately is about $1.3 million. And that's just that area. It's 3 times that to do the whole roof, which will need to be done eventually. And then we have the turf field, which is 14 years old, going to be 15 years old, that people wonder how we're still playing on it. If you look close at it, you'll see seams, you'll see how flat it is. They're very dangerous spots to fall. I don't know if concussion rate is, a rise in that is contributed to that, but no one, if you ask the average guy, and you know a guy with turf fields, right? What does it say is the average length of the lifespan?
Nowadays, it's more than 10, but it was 10 years.
Yeah, because our field's old.
But we also utilize it all the time.
It's used by all sports, right? So about 10 years is the lifespan on that field. We've had 14 years. It could be, I hate the word condemned, but if it doesn't, it's not the right, if it doesn't test right for a concussion test, you're going to close it down. Okay? It should have been replaced years ago. It has to be replaced. So if you're going to do the turf and the roof, you have in the surrounding area, our track is disintegrating as well. You wouldn't do the turf field without doing the surrounding track. And then our bleachers are ADA non-compliant. And then the press box. So you do that area. Now what that comes out to be is $3.6 million. The board has decided, with the public's permission at the vote in May, the budget vote, to transition $4.2 million into capital projects to take care of our immediate needs. Now, there's some suggestions down there. If you put nets around the turf field, you can use the track. Right now, anyone using the track during the use of the field is in danger. And then there are sidewalks. If you ever walk from the high school up towards the graduation field, towards the field, these sidewalks are horrendous with gaps about this size. Pete?
I'm sorry, but just to get on the issue with the nets, it actually, St. Martin said in the spring, the actual field, whether it's track or another sport, and then the actual track around is in the field activities, it can't be done simultaneously. So they actually, if they're, practicing track, or they can't use the interior of the field. So that's obviously an issue. If you do have a net, it's not the prettiest thing in the world, but you'll get greater use out of the field where now the teams will be able to use the inside and the exterior at the same time. So
And as you said, that field's used all the time for all sports. Okay, so $4.2 million, again, from the priority one list that the at-large committee and the community and the boards committee agree on will be the remainder of that $4.2 million. That comes out of the fund balance immediately. So as the state says, spend it down, that's one way to do it. You take that money that's in our bank account that we can afford to do these repairs immediately at this time. And this is in bold print. In May, the community votes yes, put that money into capital projects. It doesn't cost anything because that money's already there. It doesn't change the tax levy at all. So that's a piece of it. All right? And that's why the fund balance is there. Right? Monitoring, budgeting, planning, expenses coming in less, and trying to underspend. And what you're going to see now is how that fund balance carries us out for the next 4 or 5 years. All right, but before I do, Ed, would you like to make a report on the bond, please?
Sure. So, as Steve Coker and John Anselmo presented at last month's meeting, for those of you who are here, they discussed some of their perspectives on the bond referendum advisory committee process. To recap, several years ago, along with our district architect, there was a review of facilities and facilities needs, the condition of the facilities. From that, an initial list of projects was proposed for what do we need for the district now, and what do we need seeing, what are the needs to be seen for the future. So this bond referendum advisory committee is about district facilities needs. It's not just wish list of everything that we might want, although there are projects. The total number of projects are several dozen, and if we granted every wish and every request, it's a lot of money. It was over $50 million of requests. Now, having said that, contrary to some of the rumors which you may have heard in the community, nothing is approved. The process is that the advisory committee is going to make a recommendation to the board, and the board will decide on whether it's going to accept the recommendations in whole, in part, or not at all. So nothing is approved. There's a lot of projects on the list. At this point, after a number of meetings with the advisory committee, we have asked the administrators to go back and cull out and reprioritize the list because it's a lot of money, and as a percentage, it's a lot more than I think the community is willing to accept. We are meeting again next week as an advisory committee with the administrators and the board to go through that revision and see what the appetite is to cull the list down. There were a lot of things that we need. There's a lot of things that can't wait. Mr. Brosdale has already discussed a few of the items that we can't wait for the process to play out. The overall process is going to take the better part of 3 years once we go to vote. So that's a long time for the high school roof, which is collapsing in certain sections. Every time it rains, we pray that it's not a major rain because the whole wing is experiencing damage. The turf field was already discussed, and we pray that we can continue to have our athletic events hosted on our own turf field because it's barely acceptable safety-wise. So we're looking to take a look at that list, cull it down to something that the advisory committee thinks the community can support, and that'll be proposed to the board for a vote in the future. At the end of the day, it's not up to the advisory committee, it's not up to the Board of Education, it's going to be up to the community because it's yours and our collective tax dollars we're talking about. Gordon?
Okay, thank you, Ed. You'll be hearing every month about how far the bond is and what's going to be done about it, and hopefully we'll get to a vote very soon, because we do have a lot of priorities. Tonight is part one. Those are the topics. Hopefully you grabbed a copy and you have it in front of you. But we're talking about the Board of Education expenses, central administration, insurance, that's liability for the whole district, central printing, BOCES administrative charges. Now this is something that is hard to fathom, but we pay BOCES a fee just to use services by BOCES. It's like paying an admission fee and then paying additional to use certain things. Transportation, technology, and debt service. Glossary you have in front of you, you probably have heard these terms. Budget, revenue, what's coming to the district. Appropriate fund balance. Think of fund balance as your bank account. I just spoke about it earlier in my message. Appropriate is what you have to take out of your bank account to meet the budget. Available fund balance, how much available at the end of the year, and so on. Okay, Linda's going to speak about the projected 5-year plan, and you can see right here, there's the 4.2 million that we just spoke about, high priority items that we have to address immediately in repairs. That's our transition of 4.2 million to capital projects. Linda?
Okay, at the end of 16-17, we had about 9.9 million left in fund balance. So we carried that over to this beginning of this year, and then we're expecting not to spend out of our budget about 2.4 million. Out of that, we want to reduce, it's recommended by the state that we reduce our fund balance, so therefore it happens to come at a good time because we have a capital project that we want to use the money for. So that's about 4.2 million. So we're going to bring down our fund balance to 6.5 million, which is 10%, 10.8%. The next year that we're proposing is that we make our budget tighter, so therefore we only go up 0.67, and we're only going to be underspending that budget by about 767,000.
You can see the difference from years prior. When you tighten the budget, what is left there.
And we're going to tighten the budget for the next 4 years, so we'll probably remain about 770,000 for each of those years. We also decided that the revenue, the state aid, we were only going to increase by 100,000. We always did only increase it by 100,000. In light of what's happening with the state and with the federal government, we're staying with the 100,000 each year increase. The tax levy, we're subject to the tax cap. So last year it was 1.7, well actually for this year it was 1.7. Last year it was 0.56, that's what most of we could go up. And so next year we're estimating 1%. That could go up more, that could go less, but right now we're putting in 1%. In 1920 we estimated 1.5% increase, and in 2021 and 21, 22, we estimated 2% each of those years. It does bring us out, but for 4 years, we do, every time that we do get an increase in the levy or an increase in revenue, we would like to reduce our appropriations so that therefore we're not as dependent on the fund balance to balance our budget. If we have any increase in retirements, our budget could be underspent by more money, which could also bring us out further. But I think we're in pretty good shape. We were out 4 years, and that's all.
Okay. If I could draw your attention to the bottom line again, where the fund balance, as I mentioned, we have about 9.9, and you're subtracting 4.2 immediately from there. And then we're underspending, we're only going up 6.7 in our budget, the lowest in a number of years. So you can watch the fund balance, I call it our bank account, diminish. You spend it down, as the state said. Now keep in mind, they're saying with that 2% tax cap, you can only have 4% in tax in your fund balance. So this is next year's budget. This is what we're talking about, 18-19. Here we drop down to 6. I told you the legislature realizes 4 is not much in your fund balance in your bank account. They're talking about raising that to 6 or 8. So we may be hitting that the following year at the limit that the state permits. We certainly hit it in here when we drop down to 2%. But what this shows, and by the way, our auditors said, why don't you plan 200,000 more in revenue? Because that's been your average the last few years. And we thought with the tax plan coming out, our president's tax plan, which is affecting New York, as we all know, what we could write off in our property tax, what we can't do, and can't write off New York State tax. And that plan is putting the nation in a $1.5 trillion hole. How is he going to make up that money? So is he going to cut what he gives to the states? We're anticipating that he's going to cut title grants, title money to school districts. So you have to keep that in mind. Then you have Cuomo, before his presentation, saying the state has a $4.4 billion debt we're looking at. So in a lot of the press today, they're saying, how is he going to make up that $4.4 billion? He's going to cut school aid, except for certain things, like charter schools. But we were happy, at least we didn't make less. They gave us 30, as small as it is, 31,000 in our foundation aid was a positive, not much, but it was a negative. And the other factors we received from the state today, we have to look at the figures. We have to figure out how that's going to affect Mount Sinai. Pete?
Which is the reflection on the state aid for this year. This is an election year. The majority of the executive and the legislative, where going forward in the future, we might not be as fortunate if those deficits still persist going forward. So that 31,000 might end up being a negative, obviously going forward.
Yeah, you never know. We have to look at the other transportation figures too. A lot of this, again, you need to know that as we plan this, we're trying to estimate where we're going. We've been fortunate in the last few years to be somewhat accurate. Linda's been on the money and guesses very well. And we're trying to plan going forward. But there are other factors. Linda mentioned retirees. They're not up here. Well, if we get their letters April 1st, that will be additional savings. In March 1st, when we find out what our tax cap really is and where it is, if it's above 1%, which we're planning the budget at, that's more money that will be coming to the district. So there are a lot of variables when you try to do this. That's why you'll find online, many districts only do their one-year budget. You'll see 18-19 online, and you won't see past that, as within research, right? 1 year. Okay, let's start talking about what's up here. This isn't really new, these are the same things. The board is dedicated to keeping our programs in place, not just keeping them in place, but improving them. The board has allowed us to bring in Columbia Writing to improve elementary. We're putting money into the reading program this year. We want to keep those things. We want to make our kids better readers, writers. We want that to continue into the middle school. And of course, we were just told again last week, our high school is a reward school again, recognized by New York State. So we want to keep that status, we want to keep things in place, and you don't want to go anywhere near piercing the cap. Okay? And it's challenging, as I mentioned, Steve pointed out last week. Steve works in the Sayville School District, worked with bonds, lots of things, he's seen this. With a 2% cap and only allowed 4% in your bank account, it's hard to maintain everything you have. All right, we were just mentioning our tax levy last year. What we brought in from, that's our source of revenue, folks, our taxes from the community. And what we brought in last year was $39,350. We're only going up 1% to $39,743. We're estimating the tax cap I just mentioned. If it's higher than that, we have more income. Appropriated fund balance to meet last year was 1.8. We're going down 100,000. It's 1.7 to balance our budget this year. And we always go into ERS, the reserve, where we can take money from. We do this every year. 205,000 is included in that 1.7. What we anticipate our revenue to be last year was 18.1. We're going to 18.2. I just told you we're conservative estimate of going up 100,000. And then what does it say in the long run when you look at all those numbers? This is the important number here because you can't spend more than $396,756 in all of our presentations. Tonight, we'll cover 13% of this whole budget, 13% total. But at the end, we cannot go over that amount. That is 0.67 budget increase. Right. All right. Board of Education, Central Administration. You have it in front of you. Here are the figures. And you'll see most stay the same, zero increase, some decrease. Board of Education, money is exactly as, look at budget, I'm directing you to this column and this column. These are what we think we'll be spending this year. This is what we budgeted last year in last year's budget. So you can see Board of Education is the same. Most of that is produced in the New York State School Board Association. District clerk, to do her thing, it's $1,000, no increase, $1,000 again. Now this one, district meetings, the $21,000 provides for 2 votes if we need them. In May, we vote on the budget, and we'll be voting on the capital project transition, $4.2 million. That's one. If the budget fails, you have to have another vote in June. So that's 2. If the budget passes and we happen to have a bond ready by September, you have the 2 votes, the money is provided for right there with the $21,000. That's me, school district administrator, $7,100, that's dues, mileage, organizations, etc. Auditing. Now this has an asterisk. That's going up $700 because our contract with the auditor is up. We actually have to go to bid on an auditor. So we're planning $700 to do that. Bob?
Just a quick question, I may have missed it.
Can you speak just a little louder?
Just a quick question, I may have missed it. If the capital project is something that would be on in May, we have to vote on moving that money over. And if there is additional need, we would also proceed with one single vote with the bond in May. Is that correct?
If it were ready to go out in public with the bond, in my own personal opinion, I think we have a lot of work to do on that. I don't know if the committee has to discuss that, the board has to approve that bond vote in May. You could do both. Is that what you're asking?
That's what I'm asking. It's just,
I'm thinking in my head,
in
probably
January,
September.
when we had done this previously, there's a need. If there's continuing need, we're pushing this now further and further out. And we're spending double voting for the public when they should be given it all at once. It's a financial plan. I I don't see why we would just suddenly push it off into September.
When it's ready to go for public, ready to board votes, we go vote on that.
I always get concerned with these outlying votes for bonds that are not at the time when you have otherwise your budget being voted on. It's not anything other than a tax, that you're not being as transparent. That's why I think we should try to do it in as inexpensive a way and get it by May.
And the mayor has a lot of work to do. I just mentioned auditing, treasurer remains the same, $2,500. Purchasing the same. Fiscal agent fee, that's the guy who goes out, gets our loans, files the papers for our TANs. Now legal is going to go decrease. As you can see, we budgeted 230 last year. We're only going to spend 2. We've had less litigious cases, fortunately, and so we are budgeting we have $80,000 less than we budgeted last year. Personnel the same. Public information pays for all our postage. We actually rent a postage machine, which is that one. So all total for this category, we have a decrease of $79,300 in that category. All right, central printing, insurance, or liability for the district, postage administration charge. Central printing, we lease all of our printers. That's remaining the same as last year. Insurance, it came in under our estimates, so we're planning less insurance, $380 down to $355. BOCES gave us a real good break on our use of services. They took $2,000 off. But add those two things up, you have a decrease of $27,000 in that category. Technology. This is Ken's budget. If you don't like it, that's Ken right there. Okay. So equipment, you can see listed below. Ken had a little less of a need in equipment, so we're asking for less. Contractual, it's down a bit. Materials and supplies, down. Thanks, Ken. And software, Ken needed a little more software for various things in schools. That's up a bit. Now, what this is here in BOCES, in this category, you can see we increased by about $5,000. There's software called Envision, and it's going to bring Mount Sinai for our office, right? The accounting office. And it's a bolster, and it's bring us into the 21st century as far as the software goes for support and training for our staff. But Envision, we're like one of the last districts, we don't have it. It's better for our district, and that's a $5,000 raise. So you add all of the technology up, Ken did a nice job, and it's a $5,000 increase. Transportation is always an interesting subject. We always estimate that it's going to be a 2% increase for the year. And we verified, we called the bus company the other day, first student, they verified it's about that, 2% increase. Last year's 1.8. Now to take you through all of this, what all of this is our own transportation in district office. You see the severe drop in expenses. That's because I call it Mustang Sally. It's not Mustang Sally. It's Safety Sally. Safety Sally was picked up by First Student, and they're going to handle that this year, and it saved us $5 grand. Thank you, First Student. Regular transportation with our buses running around the district with our 3 buildings. You can see we were able to cut 2 buses, and our expenses are down in that category. Field trips and athletics, just again a 2% raise. This OCC transportation is our students going to BOCES for occupational courses. And we have 33 kids who go outside the district for occupational courses, 33. special ed. 33. Non-public transportation, what you have there is, those are students who live in the district and go to private and parochial schools. The parents pay the tuition, we must pay the transportation. And Linda, correct me if I'm wrong, the reason why this went up is because we lost our credit.
Yes, we had a discount of $353,000, they took it back. But we did reduce our 2 buses, so.
Yeah, we had a credit for this category from the bus company, they took it away after a number of years, but we were able to, we planned and cut 2 buses to make up for that, some of that expense.
And we had a decline in enrollment, and that's why we were able to reduce the regular transportation.
And declining enrollment helped us as well. Okay, now this is non-public late buses. We have late buses in the district. We have to pay for the late buses to those outside schools. That's the New York State law. That's what those things are called, non-funded mandates. The state makes the law, they don't give you any financial assistance. So total, what you have is, oh, no, I'm sorry, you have a contingency here in the district, should we have emergency buses or need any additional buses at any time. Linda plans 100,000 contingency. Now we also have a smaller contingency for BOCES down here. The whole thing is 191,000, right, with 2% increase for that category. Debt service, what are our loans and our bonds that are out there? Our TANs, tax anticipation notes, and what we pay in other loans.
Can I ask you a question on TANs? Linda, do we get a notice that that's supposed to go up, the rate for districts using TANs?
Well, I checked with my financial advisor, and he tells us what we really should be budgeting for, about. So I'm putting in about 2.5%.
BOCES spoke of an unanticipated increase. Advisory letter went out the last week that
Okay.
it's supposed to be, the interest rate is supposed to be going up. I don't know if that will apply to us, but
It probably would. I didn't get that notice, but
yeah.
I'll call our advisor.
Okay, on top, we're still paying off the high school bond. That's our basic loan, but you'll see that's a payment schedule. Last year, it was $1,625,000. This year, our payment schedule is $1,630,000. The good part is, those bonds and loans, you see the interest going down because we're near the end of the loan. We're ready to pay it off. After 25 years, the high school finally be paid for.
When?
TAN interest, you have to borrow because although you collect your taxes to pay what your levy, and you need that money to run your expenses, we don't get that money till January. You don't get it end of July, you don't get it in September. We have to borrow money until we get that money in taxes. So that's what TANs means. And you are planning a little bit for interest going up, yes?
Yeah.
That's why the 180 to 200,000. Installment debt, we had purchased 2 trucks and a tractor. So this is what our installment payments are for the
Yes.
year, right?
Yes.
And then down here, we've had this energy performance contract that dates back years that replaced boilers, heaters, windows, doors. And that contract goes out through the year 2027.
27.
28. So when you add this up, basically to the decreases in the debt service and a little bit of the installment debt going out, you have a decrease of 62,565. So again, just a quick review. Probably wasn't very quick for you. It's not real fast for me either. But what it is, on administrative costs, basically, the reason why you have a decrease is because of the legal fees went down. In special items, our insurance liability came in less than we figured, so we're planning less. BOCES administrative charges went down a couple thousand, so we had a decrease here also. Technology, 303 to 308, that $5,000 bump I told you envisioned for our accounting department to bring us to the 21st century, that's a $5,000 hike. Transportation is generally a 2% rise. Debt service, we're slightly a little bit less because our loans are being paid off. Now here, in summary, this is what you have. Remember I showed you that total we can spend, in total on the whole thing? And this, keep in mind, all of this you're looking at is a 13% piece of the budget we'll be presenting over the few months. So we have increased from tonight's presentation $27,825, which is 4%. When you look at this, I showed you way back when, this is what we're allowed to spend in the whole budget. This is what we've spent tonight's presentation. So this is the balance we have going forward in the next few months in the other parts of the budget. And you'll be hearing about that on February 28th. So don't miss it, right on your calendars right now. And what we'll talk about is special ed, pupil personnel services, building principals budgets, instructional and ancillary areas. That is adult ed and it's called driver's ed, ancillary. Thank you. Questions? Tom?
I noted the debt service decline, as the principal balance is down. Is that net of interest income? They have $9 million in the bank theoretically. Is that?
I did that in the fund balance, in the revenue, I decreased the revenue by the 500,000 in building aid that we're going to get. We're doing the 5-year projection with the fund balance. Right, I have to, that's what we're getting, but we'll be getting less.
Yes.
When is the high school paid off?
1819, that's our last payment,
That's our last payment?
next year.
Okay. Question for you with the 4.2 million coming out of the fund. For the past couple of years, all these budget meetings, it's always been, we're going off the cliff with the fund balance, we're going off the cliff, we're going off the cliff very soon, we gotta worry. And then all of a sudden, this year is coming in going, wow, we have this extra 4 million to spend on things that need to happen, and we have this huge fund balance. Is it just based on, we had a lot of
It's what I
cushion
tried
in the
to address
budget?
at the beginning of my message, things that went our way. We got more state aid than we planned. But again, certain costs you're not going to know until you know actuals. And we are fortunate that last year we underspent and there was money left over, carryover, and last year too. We don't know when we set that up. But we see it and we have it, and this is what we're doing about it. We're transferring 4.2, and you can see we're budgeting tighter, and you can see the fund balance is spending down. You want to do a lot of things, the 2%, not knowing what it's going to be, you have to plan a certain way. You want to be safe. You can't handle insurance, you know on your own what insurance costs are. Gas and oil month to month. I look at local service stations, prices change all the time. All of those things. Insurance, you figure it's going to, it comes under. Maintenance, we might have to do this, might have to that. We don't have to do that right now. So, yeah, I understand what you mean. But actually, I look at it as a fortunate thing, because you are okay right now for a few years, but Pete just pointed out too. Although we got numbers in the 31,000 foundation aid, and we have other numbers to see how is Mount Sinai being impacted by the governor's budget. We won't know until we see those numbers. It could be not as glorious as we think. But we plan this on the information we know now and what we have in front of us. And frankly, I do feel better feeling that we are a few years safer and that we don't have that thing I've called various things over the last 3 years, and you've heard them all. The cliff, the area of concern, the year of concern, Black Sabbath.
They were
But-
always 3 years out. Or 4
Yeah,
years
3
out.
years,
It
we
was always
projected
3 to
safety.
4.
But this year, yes, with that unspent fund balance, we did have it, and I did list reasons why. I said, Lisa, where did we save? Where did it not come in? And in the spring, when we cut the principals off, if they don't need the money they're saying they need, then we're taking it back. So things worked well favorably for us, and we recognize that, we have it. And then we recognize at the same time we have a bond where we have repairs that have to be made. So we have money in the bank. It's like in your house. If you got the money, and you have to fix these things, fix them. Especially if it's not going to cost you, that money's in the bank. It's not coming out of your other projected income at the time. So I feel good about that. I feel good we can get these things. As I think about that field, every time it's inspected, I worry about it. I look at the sidewalks, how hideous they are. We had an elderly woman fall outside the middle school, and that was a litigious action as well. I look at bricks falling off the high school. I get pictures of the total art wing underwater, and of all the wings to get wet, PPS, special ed wing, where nothing could be left on desk. It's a projected rain. You have to batten down the hatches. Leave nothing out in paperwork. And that's where the water pours in. So there are things we can't wait for. Whether the vote takes place in May or the vote takes place in September. And you've got to, there are 4 members, as I said here, on the community committee. And there's a lot of work. And they started taking tours of all our buildings last summer. And we have priority 1, 2, and 3. And a lot of those things have to be fixed. But right now, if you wait to fix that field, you may not be playing any games on it next year. And all the teams that use it. And you know, as well as how many years are we going to go ADA compliant with our seating? You know, we've already been spoken to and received warnings about that. So between that and the roof, it has to be done, and I'm glad we have the money. And if anything, the public should feel somewhat better about it, because one of the committees and the district committee and the board, we're concerned what that bond price is going to be. If we're able to take 4.2 right now, we're reducing the that bond cost, because that will cost money, not taken out of fund balance where it's not, it's basically cost-free, because you paid for it in your taxes already. But the bond will cost community money. Windows have to be replaced, heating units have to be replaced. I could go on, and but until that's definite, the committee said, this is what we're deciding, this is what we're recommending for approval by the board. We don't want to share it with you at this time, because we can show you a long list, but nothing's decided on. So it doesn't make sense. Hopefully that happens soon. And we're going to, but a bond, even if you, as I said, you voted for it tomorrow, you wouldn't see that stuff happening for 2 to 3 years out. State has to approve all your plans, for example, which takes months, and then you have to go out to bid who's going to do the work, which also takes time. So it's a couple of years. Can these things wait a couple of years? No. Certain things can. That's why if we're doing 3-6, the other 600,000, the board and the committee has to decide what are we going to use that other money for. That has to be done now. So it's a lot of things going on at the same time. But I'm relieved somewhat that these emergency repairs can be done now. It takes a little to eat off. But you have all the stuff that's left.
If we spend down the fund balance, and then the state changes how much of a percentage we can have in the fund balance.
4%?
Right, if it goes higher to 6 or whatever, can we add in fund balance so that we can have money for emergencies?
Well, it has to come from somewhere.
Sorry?
I mean, it would have to come from somewhere, so the fund balance would be coming from unspent budget. Or
Right.
it would be coming from increase in state aid or tax levy. That's the only places we would get it from.
Right.
Hopefully they'll make up their minds, for they talked about it for 2 or 3 years. The states also, Cuomo's talked about these unfunded mandates. He started a committee in 2011 to study the problem. Every school, you must have AED devices. You must check your boilers. You must do this. Every year something comes out, but no money to fund it. That digs into our budget all the time. Have they still going to help us with that? No. But they constantly do it. So, you know, you've got all these factors that are going on, and hopefully they would actually come out, as I've said before, tell us what our tax cap is. Is it 1% every year? Then we can plan, and it's not all it's guessing. And we would be more accurate with costs. What is it? We have to wait. We're going to present next month, too, not knowing. Because they don't tell you, you're not going to get the information to determine it until March. And a lot of weird things can happen in the state by that time. And Pete kind of mentioned PISA before. Cuomo's ready to run for president, you know that. So there's a lot of things being done for various reasons to allegedly make him look good. And he has been given an education, Tom. Oh, I'm sorry, Pete.
I'm sorry, Congressman, just to kind of emphasize the point I was trying to make before about the current state aid. This is driven, in my opinion, by politics due to the re-election of all local assembly people, local state senators, and the governor in this particular year. My concern is going forward with the deficits that the state is facing, $4 billion in fiscal year starting April 1st. What's going to happen next year when they're not running? When they have that excuse to say, you know what, you got to deal with it, similar to what they did in 08, 09. That's my concern.
And that's a real concern. Absolutely. Tom.
Thanks. Assuming we do proceed with the 4.2 million transfer to capital fund, which seems like a no-brainer, right?
Right.
Are we able to market it on the referendum that it is a actually transfer, with no incremental tax
Yes,
increase?
we've done this
Absolutely.
before.
Okay,
Absolutely.
just trying to remember.
On the budget
Yeah.
brochure, we
I know, it's
mentioned
kinda
and noted
crazy
that
that-
it's not any increase in taxes.
You would think that why wouldn't someone vote for it? But you never know. I've seen stranger things in other
Sure.
districts when, for example, when we did it in my former district, have a bond up along with the budget and a number of things, and people said, I'm not voting for everything. I'll vote yes, I'm voting on that, so I'm voting no on that one. You can never tell how people think. Never. But to me, it's a no-brainer, because that money is in the bank and we need these repairs, so let's do it, and it's not costing anything.
It's very clear to voters that it's not incremental.
Absolutely have to do that. Yeah.
So, Gordon, you mentioned that we got some savings in transportation from lower enrollment, right?
A little bit.
From what?
We were able to eliminate some buses in part because of lower.
Yeah, let-
Enrollment, yes, and where they are in the district.
Right. So I know that there's been a downward trend in enrollment for a number of years. Where are we projecting to go over the next couple of years in revenue, in enrollment? And how is that going to affect our overall budget and our expenditures related to number of
Well, you're right on the
students?
money, Brad, with a few things. One, we have lower enrollment, we're down to around 2150. When I applied for this job, we were at 2450 plus. Okay? So that's in 3 years that happened. And we watch our kindergarten classes very carefully entering the building. And last year we had 126, 123, and the year we went with full day K was 166. So believe it or not, as we speak now, that 166 is a big class moving through. We still have, is it 8th into 9th this year, the 200,
Yeah.
the last largest group going through, and I think you have like 188 and one other. But we have to watch that because that will mean accessing teachers. And we know we're eliminating at least one position now. We wonder when people retire, do we have to replace them? You know, not, you do save money from the 140 to 53, that's for sure. But it's more of a savings if you don't have to replace that teacher. We know that the bump going into the high school, we can't access yet on the high school level because I have that big class coming out of the middle school. So we're looking at the elementary school will probably be that area where you're really looking to hire less bodies. And then when those big, large bumps are out there, I really don't know. Because Kerry, who teaches in Shoreham Wading River, I was alarmed last year to discover Shoreham Wading River is at 2,100 kids and
Yeah.
declining.
Every year it's got less, kindergarten enrollment is much lower for next year, as of now.
Right. Everyone's going through it. You know, a lot of people say, don't worry, it's going to bounce back, but it's going everywhere. Miller Place is dropping like 200 at a clip in their classes. So, yeah, that's going to affect the budget. We have to watch it very closely. The board's asked us really to look at that, not only retirements, but where can we access people because of enrollment. We have to watch it in every class.
I'm sorry. That's where our fund balance would go up also, because
Okay.
then we would have less than we were spending.
Okay. Because I wasn't seeing a whole lot of change in the next couple of years, you know, knowing that the enrollment is declining, I'm not really seeing a big difference in the budgets going forward in the next few years.
Now, although you'll see a tightening here going out, and as we find out we are able to deal with less bodies, you'll see a better savings going forward. And those, again, who retire. But keep in mind, we have pretty large class sizes too in elementary, and that's why you're not seeing more cut.
I think the Brad's comment is spot on. The need for a strategic plan that accommodates what our staffing needs are, what our certifications of teachers are. Because not, they certify from K-6 and then 7 through 12, what their, where they can be placed, and how we can, over the next 5 years, accommodate changes in our community, accommodate changes in the tax burden to our community, the lack of deduction of a portion of the tax burden. This is part of what has to be a strategic plan, not just, well, we're only going up a little bit. That has to be looked at, because if our last large class is 8th grade right now, and if you look at the elementary school, there's, from 122 to 216, 215, that was a small class back in the day. Now it's 80 kids. That's sections that we have to plan for how we can maybe find a way to develop it through attrition and not replace. And what does that do for the overall budget at the same time that we are thinking, how do we spend less and also draw less, so that the fund balance isn't the artificial input of money.
As we want, as I said, we know we can't on the secondary level. Linda's made projections and created projection charts that show you that you're going to hit the elementary first, and those bumps around the secondary will be a whole different story. And not only, as I cautioned before, where you have a declining enrollment, you have an increase in free and reduced lunch, which is interesting here. I talked about the population being 2450 when I applied, down to 2150. When I came here, you had a free and reduced rate of about 2%. Now it's 9.3 or thereabouts. So what's going on outside? You have to watch all of it. Okay? Thank you. Tom.
Anything happening to our commercial tax revenue in an area that's helping us factor into this at all? There was something on 25 that was supposed to happen that got squashed.
Brad's the expert on that. Brad, you want to give an update?
Brad told us all about the additional rental income that's going to come.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you want me to do that, or do you want to do that?
I can do it, that's fine. So I think the project here we're talking about was next to King Cullen, perhaps, yes? Yeah, so that was a long history that the developer tried to put in a commercial space. It didn't work for various reasons. The current plan that's been submitted to the town is for 140 units of rental housing targeted at specifically the millennial demographic. The idea is to create workforce housing for young people so that they can afford to live on the island. The ratio is about 80% two-bedroom apartments and about 20% one-bedroom apartments.
But they changed that ratio?
It's about
It
that
was
right
about
now.
90 apartments were two bedrooms.
Yeah, I don't remember the ratio off the top of my head at the moment, but it's about that. That's one of the reasons I was asking about the amount, because as I'm vice president of the Civic Association. We've been working with this developer to understand, with their projections of the number of students that would come into that development, what the cost is to the school district. So that there's a 140 unit rental component. There's also a sizable commercial component as well that would be in the front part of the building. So there is the front part of the property. So there is a significant amount of tax revenue associated with that project, part from the housing and part from the commercial.
So what's the latest amount of the builder, how many kids did you determine would come into Mount Sinai?
Originally,
Originally, it was 27, which, you know, it choked me out.
yeah, we met with the developer again as a board. They looked at those numbers more deeply, and the numbers are about the same. They did some more analytics of the types of students that be coming in, the ages, and things of that nature.
I just look at basics. I look at 140 apartments in Mount Sinai where you can't find houses, correct? 90 are 2 bedrooms, and they're projecting that only 27 kids would come out of it. And some of that, what do the 1 bedrooms go for? Rent in Mount Sinai?
I think it was around 1,800 or so.
18. Now, some of that by law has to be deemed affordable housing, correct? So it'll be less than 1,800 for an apartment in Mount Sinai. Okay, so, I mean, it started, I was having flashbacks on my history lessons in China when you could have 1 child. But, you know, 27, 2-bedroom apartments, I don't know what would stop people saying, we got another bedroom, why don't we have a kid? Well, we can handle it. I know certain families where 1 bedroom, they could have a child. And I'm saying, and you and I had this discussion many times, so I don't mean to beat it down. But since you asked me so many questions that bored me, I definitely want to talk about this. So, when we look at that and affordable housing, so that might make an apartment in Mount Sinai less than $1,700, true?
That's accurate, yes.
Yeah. Okay, and now I have no rules or laws on who, I can't make it a Mount Sinai person get those apartments, right?
That's correct.
So I look at the Mount Sinai School District and its reputation, and I say, holy crap, for $1,650, I can get an apartment in Mount Sinai. Or I can get a 2-bedroom for, was it 21?
I think it was about 21 years.
For 21. So, I don't know. I love you like a brother, but 27 kids out of 140 apartments still is hard for me to really swallow.
Yeah, and we are working with the developer and the analytics firm that they retain to go through those numbers and understand where they're coming up with them and the metrics behind them.
Okay, Mike?
Question. You said 140 apartments
Correct.
and 80% 2-bedroom.
I believe that's
About
correct.
90.
So that's correct. It's 112 2-bedroom apartments.
No, it's around 90, 2 bedrooms. I know what you're saying.
No.
Your math is great.
80%
You're better than me, my
100,
friend.
80 out of 100 would be 80 right
But I
there.
believe the brochure said around 90 or 2 bedrooms.
So I'm just going by the math.
All right, do it.
Either or.
Live with your math. Go
Let's
ahead.
say with 100.
All right.
Now, out of 100 2-bedroom apartments, I'm a single guy, I live there. Okay, if I have a wife, I can still live in the same bedroom. I'm confused on how this math works, but you don't have children in the second bedroom.
They're not, they're anticipating it's going to be young professionals splitting the apartment. I mean, their data is saying it's going to be people
What
just
young
out of
professionals
college.
are living up here?
Right.
They
For what
are,
jobs?
they are intending to attract young professionals
I'm
where
going
there
to the
are,
railroad station down there on Conklin where they're building, how many hundreds?
well, there's also people that live in, young people that live in Mount Sinai that want to stay here. There is no rental in Mount Sinai today.
Right.
So there
Well, some
are-
people are renting in the ranches for $2,300 a month because they don't have a house here.
Right. They are planning on targeting people working for Stony Brook, for Mather, for the various medical.
Then I'm getting an
buildings.
apartment over in Port Jeff where they just built those massive apartments. Okay.
Yeah, well, those are also going to be more expensive, as I understand it. And there are certain unfun things to those, like you can only have a single car there because of the highly limited parking there.
So
I think
let's,
the issue with it is rental apartments, no objection to that. It's that the builder wants a reduced tax rate and doesn't want to pay their full share, recognizing that it's $17,000 per student, and that there's going to be more than 27 students.
27.
You know, so that's the objection.
It's not, it's
The
not.
opportunity.
Tom, it's many paragraphs long, but your answer is that's a losing proposition for the district. So, but you know of
Not
other
necessarily,
ventures, right?
Because they did revise the projected tax revenue, and it was higher than we had discussed initially. I don't have my notes with me on what it is projected to be, but there was projected to be a significantly higher surplus than what we had initially talked about.
You know when they're gonna start building on this?
We don't know yet.
But all the paperwork's filed.
They're not for
The commercial was always there, but we
weren't.
didn't have the tax numbers including the commercial. But it is quite a bit higher than they had initially discussed.
So any other ventures going on that you're aware of that might make
Yes.
us a little money?
Yeah, so if you're familiar with the company that operates under Bristol Senior Living Facilities, they have purchased property next to the ranches. That property was subject to a lawsuit by the Civic Association going back about 20 years and was set aside to be used exclusively for a long-term health facility. Bristol has purchased that property, and they are in the process of building that facility, which will generate revenue for the school district without any children.
Aren't any kids?
Right.
And wasn't there one other one, a housing situation?
They're on Mount Sinai Quorum Road, just north of Plymouth. There's a parcel of property that was owned by the Diocese of Rockville Center that was purchased by a developer, and they're planning on putting in 8 or 9 single-family houses there.
Okay.
And the one on Plymouth Canal, right?
Yes, that's a 55 and older community, planned development community, for 98 units of 55 and older housing.
So there's your commercial. Done.
Loaded question.
Sure was. Okay. Thank you, folks. Thank you, everyone. Return to the stage.
Just a reminder, we're being videotaped, so right now you can ask a question if you'd like on other things pertaining to the agenda. If you'd like to ask something, please come up to the mic so we can hear you. Good?
Come up to the mic.
Good night.
My name is Michael DeMarco. My only question is on the Teachers Association memorandum agreement. Is that the same one that was signed in, or same format as the one that was signed in June, I guess it was?
In what?
The memorandum
It's the same as.
is the one that was signed in June.
That was the contract. That was
Mhm.
teacher's contract. This is a separate memorandum of agreement that we will be voting on tonight and discussing. Do you want to know what it is?
Yeah.
Basically, it's an enhancement to the teacher's retirement incentive, and it adds to people who are first eligible to retire a benefit that pays for their health insurance, similar to one signed in 2015, I believe. And it has different parameters so that the district can actually project how many retirees we will have over the course of the next 5 years. And we will know, we agree, this April, how many will retire in the next 2 years, and the following April, how many will retire in the next 3 years.
I asked that question because I haven't seen the teacher's contract that was signed. The only thing that you see online, and I haven't seen the website this month, is the signed one from June of 2017. That was a memorandum, it wasn't the full contract, so that's what I was asking.
When we
It's
expect?
still being developed, it's not finished yet.
That's why I got confused.
It was signed and sealed, but it takes usually several
That's fine, I'm
months.
just saying, it's the only thing that's...
Anything else? Brad?
Hello. So I'll ask my two questions and then you can answer them. First one is section 6D1. What is STEAM Club and why is it replacing the Drama Club? And section 8A for the donation. Can you give us some background on what this donation is?
Okay, the STEAM is, we have a few advisors. No one applied for the drama coach spot at the middle school. They beat the bushes, no one showed up. It's a lot of work. So at this present time this year, we're going to take the stipend. There are 2 advisors who want to advise the STEAM club. That's STEM with art added. And so we thought we'd take advantage of that for our kids, rather than leaving it because we have no advisor for drama club, have nothing. It made sense to go ahead with that. The other stipend is, I believe, from a former student from Mount Sinai. Often when we have our paying for lunches, sometimes folks run into debt or can't pay the total amount. And this former student came forward to make a donation to clear the accounts of a number of people who owe money up from their lunches.
Thank you.
Very generous thing to do.
Anybody else have a question on the agenda right now? You'll have time at the end of our meeting to ask almost anything that you'd like to know, but this is agenda questions. So now we'll get on to personnel, resignations. Carrie, School District 8.
Sure. School District 8, resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby accepts resignation of Janova Turpin, School District 8, effective December 9th, 2017. And I choose.
We have to vote. I'll second. Give a second.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Ed. Any comments? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Senior clerk typist.
Sure. Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby accepts the resignation of Mary Ann Meehan, senior clerk typist, effective April 8th, 2015.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Pete. Just wanted to say I've known Mary Ann forever. She's worked in the middle school. Now she's Rob Grable secretary at the high school, and she's an institution here, so she will be missed greatly by many, many people. Any other comments? All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Instructional ed?
Instructional appointments, substitute teachers. Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby approves the following appointments as listed.
Second? Thank you, Mike. Any comments? The former student, Michael Ulmer, who's going to be a substitute, whose mom is a nurse at high school. Any other comments? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Mike, School District 8?
Sure. Non-instructional appointments, school district aides. Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby approves the following appointments. Lindsay Godden, substitute aide, and Edith Lupo, aide.
Thank you, Mike. Second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Ed. Any comments? All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Other appointments? Bob?
Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby authorizes the following co-curricular club and appoints the persons listed below as advisors for the 2017-18 school year. STEAM Club replacing Drama Club, Morgan O'Reilly.
Thank you, Bob. Second? Thank you, Mike. And that is in the middle school, correct? In the middle school. All in favor? Opposed? It's
Number 2, girls basketball coach. Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby approves the following appointments. John Grossman, January 18, effective date 2018. Girls basketball coach, compensation, volunteer.
Keith, can I have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Ed. Any comments? All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Action items. Carrie, special ed?
Committee on Special Education, resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education has no objections to the following special education recommendations and approves the authorization for the funds to implement the special education programs and services consistent with such as listed.
Carrie, second?
Second.
Thank you, Mike. Any comments? All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Action items. Ed?
Donation. Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby accepts a donation from Critic Clothing, Inc. in the amount of $238.79 to be applied to the outstanding balances of free and reduced lunch students.
Thank you, Ed.
Second.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you to the former student for paying it forward. Nice thing to do. Any other comments? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. MOA, Mike?
Sure. MOA Teachers Association, resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Board of Education hereby approves memorandum of agreement with the Teachers Association dated January 17, 2018.
Thank you, Mike. And second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Ed. Any comments? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. And finally, questions and comments from the community about anything? Hi, Brad. Come on up.
I know you're surprised.
I was just waiting.
Okay, so I have 2 questions. First, related to Junior Honor Society. My understanding is that to be accepted into Junior Honor Society, students have to perform 50 hours of community service. I think community service is a great thing. My son has already started working on that. I'm kind of curious about that number of hours. I understand that the Port Jeff School District and the Three Village School District require 20 hours. So I'm wondering why we need more than double that number of hours. And also, you can only, my understanding is you can also only start those community service hours when you are invited to become a member of the Junior Honor Society, which leaves very little time to get 50 hours of community services. So how is that, why do we have so many more hours than other school districts?
I can only tell you I didn't know it was 50 hours or why it is, but I would recommend calling Mr. Kravitz Harris about that, Mr. Goodman, to see if it is in fact 50. Do you have something to prove for that?
So, I
I-
can help you out here.
Okay.
I didn't ask you to say this, and my daughter is going through this now. There is paperwork that comes home and it explains what needs to be done. So, 50 hours is on it. It's kicking my ass. It's a lot to get done. Just said that on video. So, that's a great question. So listen, you can find out what the Board of Ed knows. No, it's definitely there. It does seem like a lot, and I even get that from my 7th grader. Dad, I know other schools only have to do this. How come I have to do it? So it is a little bit.
And my son's in 6th grade, and we knew from our neighbor that it was 50 hours. So he started to volunteer now, and then he was told, oh no, none of the work you're doing now counts.
My objection to it is the failure of the Junior Honor Society. This is not a national requirement, it's our requirement to recognize continued volunteerism. And what this does is encourage, just for that period of time, hours, that I think goes against the very nature of the Honor Society. And for example, you learning from a neighbor that your son can't start now and start to show a conduct that supports volunteerism is wrong. And I think the best sending is, just do some volunteering to get into the program and forget about it.
Yeah,
But
I agree
I think
with
it
that.
should be changed. It should be, what are you doing? And we should look at it over a period of time for a student who shows their commitment to the community, their hours is a factor. But I think it should be something that if they're doing it over a period of time, that's more important than someone who just, well, I never volunteer for anything. I'll do it now just to check off the box. I object to the 50 hours, and I object to the limitation of the time, and it should be looked into because it doesn't encourage what the Honor Society stands for.
Yeah, I agree with that sentiment, and I would ask the board to
Voice
look
your
into
objection
that.
to the principal?
Pardon me?
Did you voice your objection to the principal?
I haven't yet.
We know you will.
You know I will.
We're
But
happy,
here's something-
we're happy you're starting the conversation though, because all of us have discussed that. I believe in the high school it's 50 hours, so it would seem unreasonable to expect a seventh grader to have that many hours. I'm not 100% sure, but I vaguely, 2 years ago, remember my son having to do that. I agree with Bob's sentiment about the whole notion of volunteerism starting early. I also think it's very important as our fifth graders are coming in to start a conversation with them about honor society in seventh grade, so that they are working toward a goal, and they, even though it doesn't count, they're still on that trajectory to get to,
We're just setting
Correct. Not just
the
on the,
expectations so that.
not just on the volunteerism, but
Students are aware.
Terry and I have spoke of this, that it's not terribly informative that in fifth grade in a different building, they're not informed sufficiently that what their expectations are, grades-wise, volunteerism-wise. That should be something told as early as possible, so our students can really strive to do it. I'm not saying that the more you can provide information, you shouldn't be learning about this from your neighbor.
I agree.
I can talk to you offline, there's a couple. So some of them are tough because they try to say, well, you can only do this for an hour. And imagine trying to build something, but there's some really good ones out there that are actually pretty rewarding. Your children will like it, and I can tell you that offline, but you've started to do it.
We've started looking, going to the Port Jeff Library where they have a number of programs, and my son is trying to get into the Coupons for Troops one that's coming up, and did some over Christmas. So he already has a number of hours built up, and he likes doing it. He makes him feel good, but to not have a count for something it makes it difficult.
Yeah, I'll inquire tomorrow about it, but I really recommend that you just got to hear from parents.
Yeah, I can talk to Mr. Commentaries. My other question concerns time between classes in the middle school. I understand that from my son that there's 3 minutes between classes, which is okay for him right now because his classes are together. But it makes me kind of upset when my two neighbors that are in the middle school come out to the bus stop with no coat on because they tell me, I don't have time to visit my locker, and my choice is to either carry my coat around with me all day because I'm in all places different across the school, or not wear a coat. So in order to not be subject to peer pressure about toting a coat around all day, they leave their coats at home. So I'd like to see what can be done to give kids a little more time during the day, if it's an extra minute or 2 minutes during the time, so they can actually put their coats in their locker and not get sick when it's 15 degrees outside.
Yeah, having been there many mornings, I haven't seen it, but I will inquire about it.
I do with my daughter too, a lot of her friends as well, they just carry everything with them. And my daughter goes with a huge backpack, gym bag, her clarinet, her lunchbox.
Carrying everything with them all day.
And I sat with her and I went through her schedule and I tried to help her. Say, this is a good time to go to your locker, this is a good time. She's like, but I don't want to be late, like she's petrified of being late.
Right.
So that's definitely a concern
3
for a lot of
minutes seems like really not enough time between classes to make a switch at your locker once a day, even if they do that. Maybe there can be some time built in. Maybe there's a 5-minute break in the middle of the day, something like that. I would think there's some way to get another couple minutes during the day so that they can go to their locker and make the switches that they need and wear a coat to
And I
school.
have 2 lockers too.
And my neighbor has a book bag that she leaves in one area of the school, so she doesn't have to tote it somewhere else. It just,
It's difficult.
it's difficult.
If you're talking to Mr. Secretary of Honor Society.
Yep,
you
I
should
can
also
bring that up to
discuss
him too,
It's a
but
good- It's a good point.
I see you guys every month, so,
Alcohol is time, so both of them.
Okay. thank you.
Thank you.
That's it, Brad, can't get back.
There's always next month.
Are there any other questions? Hi.
Hi. Can you give us an update as to the committee that you have on how heavily weighted the Regents exams are? I had asked a couple months back, you assured me there was a committee, you know there are some parents involved in that, I'm just looking for an update, come to a resolution or not.
Yeah, there's a committee, they met. I think you know that. I think you know the people who are on the committee. And we met with them again, and the difference is the teachers, staff felt they were going to maintain the 20% currently. But what has been added is a no fault. If there's any exam that's considered questionable by the state or the staff themselves, they will meet, and the student will not be charged with that exam. The weighing of it or counting against them will be decided at that time. That didn't exist before. That's the one change that happened.
Did that happen? Because I know, I mean, I was part of the committee and I haven't been notified. The last that we spoke was that it was going to be brought to the Board of
Yeah, well,
Education.
I had to go to the board with it as well, but that changed now to consider if the exam is valid enough or not, or it's questionable. That is now in the policy. But this is an ongoing thing, as you know, when we discussed. Sorry, the darkness, the rest
So
of it.
can you just clarify what that means as far as, I mean, I know, I'm just going to reiterate, you know, because I have been on the committee, one of the two parents on the committee, the teachers and the administration, and a few things that we brought up at the committee was, you know, bringing the percentage down so it didn't hurt the kids, or a no harm policy, which a lot of districts, higher end districts, so we're talking Balmore, Merritt, Roslyn, Manhasset, have instituted these no harm policies where not just if the state brings it down, saying that it's not, you know, to look further into this test, but each school looks at these tests and says, you know what, if it harms a child's grade, then we're not gonna, we're gonna look at it more carefully, and we're not gonna count it as 20% if we're still counting it as 20%. And I know that, you know, we've spoken about it, but I think that since our last committee meeting, there have been some more, you know, high-end districts that I know that, you know, our standards are comparable. I know we spoke about Roslyn, but Balmore Merritt just this past 2 weeks ago instituted a no harm policy. More so saying, again, not if it comes from the state, but they're going to look at it on their basis.
It will be looked at the building level. There is a no harm policy.
Okay, so is that something that definitely has been taken, I mean, that the board has spoken about?
Yeah, I shared this with the board, the 20% and the rest. And they are for, the indication I had at that time was they are for the no harm policy if an exam is questionable and the building and the teachers deem it questionable, especially the geometry regions.
Correct.
And the building is fine with that. And, you know, it could change next year whether they decide that, depending on what the regents' exams are, maybe it's time to lower the percent. But this
I
time,
just feel that, you know, we don't want to be followers, we want to be leaders, and there are many districts on the island now changing their policies to lowering their percentages and changing their policies. And these children that, if any kid, you know, there's a big difference between, on a GPA, between an 89 and a 90, between a 94 and a 95, when you're talking scholarships, when you're talking college, you know, entrance. You know, when you're looking at schools, when you're looking at universities, and I'm presenting this more to the board than to you, because I know we've spoken about it, but when you're looking more, when universities are looking at an unweighted GPA, which is what they look at, because you're comparing unweighted across the board, they don't know that Mount Sinai's unweighted is still at 20%, and Syosset is at 12%, And Roslyn has a 5% because they're using a no harm policy. So it's really hurting our kids. It's really, a disadvantage for our children. Coming out, it's hurting their.
I would say that's a generalization, that's hurting all of our kids. Maybe a few of the kids that are averagers went down a point or two as a result. But as we've discussed, the Regents exam is a New York State final exam on the curriculum. A quarterly grade is totally different with many components, and certainly not with the rigor of a Regents exam. A Regents exam shows the student's mastery of the content in the class, and that the staff at the high school, will forgive the expression, has a skin in the game as well as the kids. This has worked well in this district. They decided at this time there would be, when they felt an exam, anybody in the building was questionable, that exam, structure, whatever was wrong, the no harm policy could be instituted. And that was the compromise at this time. But they're aware, and you've seen the math. It's not a large group of students.
It is a large group of
I
students, though.
disagree. I mean, I have the data right here. If we look just at the algebra regents from 2015, 94%, that's 49 out of 52 students, scored lower on the regents exam than they did on their four-quarter average. That's 94% of students. So say that it's a gross generalization.
So if your child doesn't do well on a Regents exam, would you tell that child to take it over again?
I'm sorry, what was your
Did you
question?
tell your child to take the exam over again if they failed, didn't do as well as you wanted them to?
We've discussed this here in this forum before. I wish my
Yes,
child
they can
had
take it.
that opportunity to do so.
They can take it as many times as they want.
Right, and as I
Guidance
discussed
counselors know
before, I was
that.
told by our high school principal that that was not an option for my son last year with the geometry regents.
I'd have to ask them that.
We've had, well, when Mr. Grable was here about 2 months ago, we had this conversation here publicly. If you go back to the videotape, he mistakenly told me that that was not an option. I brought that forward here. I've had a conversation with a few of these board members that in other districts, it's actually really common practice for kids to just repeatedly take the exam until they're satisfied with their grade. And that was what prompted me to ask Mr. Grable at the time if he thought it was appropriate that my son do so. And I was told no.
Well, they're certainly aware of that. I made it very clear to Mike. Had a question?
Well, if I can just
Mine was actually going to be a statement in regards to when you were going over all the regencies and stuff, and I had asked in regards to the algebra regents, if the parents were aware that it's I call it a rubric, you guys use another word for it, but that it's a skewed test where you can actually wind up with, out of all the questions, you can get a 40% actually and wind up with 65, and that the parents aren't aware that the child did that bad. So that's something that, listening to this argument here, would be good to know how each test is skewed for the actual knowledge of what they
Yeah,
actually
the
get on the
teachers,
test.
knew that going into meetings and the discussions.
But the parents don't know.
But that's never on a syllabus, but never.
I'll tell you this.
Excuse me.
When Gordon first presented this, it was probably last summer, I don't know if it was June or July, the first time it came up. I had inquired with him and some of the board members about how it worked. And initially it was, hey, we have it at 20% because if our students at 20%, they're doing better. So I actually looked into that just to see, hey, what was it prior to that? When did we go to 20%? Was it 10? Did we have lower scores? Did we then raise it to 20 and our scores went up? And that didn't show because no one could remember when it was. They felt it was always at 20%. So in looking at this over the last couple of months, I've actually called some board members from other districts, some of them you mentioned, and they do have it lower. And some of those other districts are scoring just as well, if not higher than us.
Right.
So there was also, I guess it was a news article a couple of months ago. It was one of the Hamptons, don't quote me, I don't have it in front of me. And they recently changed their policy as well. And they actually called up to the state to speak with the assistant executive who was in charge of putting the test together. And the assistant actually said, we recommend you don't count it. So I actually reached out twice to the state to speak to that executive assistant to find out if you're making the exam, why would you state that? Because I wanted to know. Now, they haven't gotten back to me, and I've left them 2 messages. But I think it definitely is a question as, why would the state, who offers a Regents exam, say you shouldn't count it. The commissioner herself actually came out and said you probably shouldn't count it.
Right.
So there is
And
an
I
issue
think a lot of
there.
parents are not aware of the situation. I know a lot of parents are not aware of the situation, and that's why we've been trying to bring it up. But, and, you know, the committee that we've had, honestly, it's 2 parents, 17 or 20 teachers and administrators, because parents are not aware, unfortunately, of the percentile, of what, you know, of the whole, and I know that geometry regions is really what sparked the whole, you know, conversation throughout the state. But now looking at the data, and there is concrete data, I'm just talking Mount Sinai data right now, that a majority of the kids, I'm not talking my child, the majority of the kids do not score mastery, and it's bringing their GPAs, their unweighted GPAs now that are looked at across the board with all colleges, bringing them down, whether it's a point or 2 points. That point or 2 points is a lot when you're talking a 91 to an 89 or a 90 to an 89. So it's substantial. It's substantial, and it's really not what's in the best interest of the children. It's just, I just don't understand why, and I think it's a step in the right direction by saying that you have adopted the policy, without a doubt, a step in the right direction. And I'm sure that's come from, you know, our meetings and conversations, but I think, you know, now it sounds like it's very arbitrary as far as who makes that decision on if it's a false exam. Obviously, if it comes from the state, it has to be looked at further. But if a teacher looks at the Regents exams of their class and they're, you know, 5, 6, 7 points lower, 10 points lower than their averages, that should trigger something. There should be something in that, you know, statement that should trigger the teachers to have to look at them and say, you know what, it's 10 points lower. Something's not right with this Regents.
So, just to give you a little more, we were presented with the data from the committee about some of the exams, and I will tell you this, so I want to be clear. I am all for, you know, people should be pushed, and students shouldn't just think that something's given and they have to work. So I'm all for that. So that's why initially I said, hey, if 20% is what's doing it, then that's what it's got to be. I looked at the data. I do personally think that there could be an issue here. However, you should know that there are kids who score, let's say their average throughout the year is 93 or 94. Yeah, there are some of them who are scoring lower, and you would say that's an outlier. Why? But there are also kids who are getting 93 and 94s who are also scoring 95, 96 on the regions as well.
Very few.
But they are. But I'm saying it does prove that people who knew the material are still
Yes,
scoring.
there's always going to be a few.
So-
But when you're looking at concrete data and a majority of the population that's taking the exam, whether it be geometry, algebra, physics, whatever exam it is, and the majority is scoring lower, then that should set off a signal that it's faulty. And I'm all for pushing the kids and trying, you know, giving them that incentive. I don't want my child to think, you know, and you know, it's worth 10%. I'm not going to try as hard. You have those kids that it can be worth 5% or 25%, and they're going to try just as hard. But the issue, I think, is when you look at data on some of these other schools that have lowered them, they're doing better. Now, these kids are on a more competitive basis and have a higher GPA. They're doing better on the regions, and it's a lower score, and it's a lower percentage. So what we're saying that by having a 20% is going to, you know, push them harder, it's not, in these schools, these higher end schools that you want to compare us to, that's not the case. They've lowered their percentage, and they're scoring higher on their regions than we are.
You know as well, we're not the only one at 20%.
I know, absolutely,
Okay,
I know.
just-
But
Right, that definitely doesn't make it
So
right.
is the big concern now what will determine whether an exam should be re-examined as a potentially harmful to a student? Is that
I mean, I think there needs to be some kind of trigger point that.
an algorithm or something to
Well,
say?
you know what, and it's a lot, it's gonna be more work, obviously, for the teachers, but for the teachers to look at each student, you know what, they scored 10 points less than their average. Whatever that trigger number is, something to trigger, maybe we need to look a little more. You know, if 50% of the class that took it scored, 10 points lower than their average, it should trigger something.
I think the concern I have, now I'm going back in time, I took a final exam and the Regents. And the final exam was driven by your teacher, your classroom, or your department on the material they taught. And the problem with this is, and Mike DeMarco brought this up, is the topics being tested and the method of scoring is at odds with possibly what we've taught. And this gets back to that the classroom or the department should define what our final exam is. And maybe from what I'm listening, is that we've allowed the Regents to absolve us of preparing a final exam. And that would be a very interesting comparison. It's more work. Imagine the complaints we're going to get if we give a final exam and a Regents. But if you see a final exam and your child, your students, all score at what would be the mastery level, and the Regents, they don't, what's wrong?
Right.
I would dare say the Regents.
Right, but yet you're counting that Regents for 20%.
My big concern here is that as a cumulative year grade for the entire year, there is something to be said to have, I'll just call it a final exam. I'm not so sure that the Regents, given its veracity and credibility over the past few years, is necessarily that thing.
Absolutely, that is exactly our point.
If that would take the test.
Let the final count 20% and not the Regents. That's what the whole
At least
thing
we have
is.
some
This teacher who's
Yeah.
been testing them all year, let them create a final.
So just one other thing to add. So I tried to do a little research because some of what you're saying about if you have a 95 versus a 93, some schools may give you additional aid or, there are different components to it. So I found some of that to be true, but then I found some of it not to be. So some of the places you call some admissions counselors and they actually had said, well, we're not concerned that so-and-so from this district got an 89 and his score on the Regents was here, someone else got the same score, but they were looking at, well, what type of classes is this person taking? Are they taking harder classes? Not necessarily, hey, his GPA was 2 points lower than someone else from another school. So there is some truth to what you're saying about, hey, you might apply somewhere, and if you had a 90 compared to an 89, it may help out our students. And look, we're responsible for our students. Not that, we don't care about everybody, but we're concerned with the Mount Sinai kid. So I certainly don't want to hurt a Mount Sinai kid or possibly an 8 or something that gets them a little better because of 1 or 2 points.
Well, I think that you, as a board, representing the students of Mount Sinai, obviously, have a responsibility to the children. And I know you want to look out for what's in the best interest of the children. And it's a very, I think, great topic right now. And you see a lot of the districts changing things because of what's, because of what is going on, with the Regents and the flood regions, opposed to a final exam, which would be more, if you said the teacher's giving a final exam and it's worth 20%, okay, you know what, they've been tested on that. They've been taught that all year with this teacher. If they don't do well, they don't do well. That's,
The only thing is the state requires.
No, and I'm not saying
I'm just saying
not get rid of the I understand the Regents.
Count the
have
final
to
for
be
20%.
Right, but do you want them to study, take 2 tests?
Listen, honestly, if they're preparing for the Regents, or they're preparing for
Yeah, at this point, that's a better alternative than counting what we know to be a faulty exam for 20% of our
Absolutely.
districts. You all asked for concrete data, and we showed it to you. And the majority of our students are hurt by the Regents exams. And when you might call one college, and they might tell you that that point's not going to make a difference. But if you go right on St. Joseph College website, they show you if you're coming into this school and you have a 95 grade point average, we'll give you $18,000. If you go to 94, we'll give you $15,000. It's right there on the website. So it does come down to dollar and cents, and it comes down to point to point. It really does. Those points are important. Never mind how those points are important for our students who are trying really hard all year long to get a grade. They manage to get it in the class, and then they take a Regents exam that's faulty, and now their grade is lower. That's an issue, and that's an issue for that child going forward. That's, to me, that's, that emotional component for these kids is, especially your higher level academic kids, that's important. That's something that we should be looking at. And if we're going to sit here and say we take care of our kids and we want to do what's in their best interest, then leaving it at 20% flies in the face of all of that. I cannot think of one good argument for keeping it at 20%. And you asked for concrete data, and we gave it to you, and the answer is still we're keeping it 20%. So I'm not really sure what the explanation is. And I recognize the concession of a no harm policy, maybe with a little bit of a gray area, because I'm still not exactly sure what that means. But I don't think it's enough. I really don't. I don't think it's what's in the best interest of our kids. And like I said, I can't even understand how, after we presented with all of the data, the answer can still be really the same. Because it's not working. Right now it's broken. And the data is here. It shows you that it's broken.
So I feel like there's two things. One is the 20% and one is the safe harmless or the exam that it's, you want to throw out. So it sounds like the committee, the majority of your committee agreed to keep it at 20. Is that correct?
Well, the committee was basically teachers. It was teachers.
But just because it's a teacher doesn't mean that he or she is going to say, oh, yeah.
But you're not having an equal representation of
Right, your motivation is different.
I see what you're saying. I got you. So you're looking for more parents.
I think if you're going to do it, the right way, it should be an equal representation of parents. There should be students on the committee. I mean, like I said, I have a letter here from Belmore Merritt from January 4th. It was an equal representation. It says of parents, teachers, students, and administration. That's really what, and then you come to a consensus of what works overall for everybody.
So I guess we have to revisit this and have a conversation with Mr. Grable and see how we can, address it in a way that makes sense. I think, I was one of the proponents that said if you have an exam that is tainted or, not just by the state, but by teachers or a department, that it has to be re-examined and looked at. I also encouraged teachers and guidance department to announce to kids that you can take the Regents exam anytime you want after the fact, and that new grade will then be applied to your 4 quarters plus the Regents.
And I don't think, I know that my junior does not know that. And she's a smart student. She's a good student, that she would be aware.
I'm sure there are a lot of people who don't know it, but I think that, making people aware of that may ease a little of the concern. I had a neighbor who took the chemistry exam in August. He didn't go to summer school. He just wanted a better grade on the chemistry Regents. He took it again. He did better, and that was factored into his final average. So I appreciate your conversation. We can discuss it a little bit more and figure out where we can go and get back to you.
And I think the whole, safe, no harm policy, just, it needs to be,
fine-tuned.
Right, specified, your T's crossed and your I's dotted as to far, how do we determine if because you get 1 point less on it? No, but what triggers that per each individual child to re-examine that? That's what a lot of these districts are, and I have, a new letter that I don't think that the committee had from Belmore that just came out last week, what exactly triggers.
Could you put some of this data together for the board? Because I've seen some pieces,
Yeah, you should have a lot of it. I do have some of it here that I can leave you and you can make copies or distribute.
If you could make each of us a packet, that would be so great, because then it'll be in one place and we'll each have a copy and we can.
Yes, I will get a packet of everything together.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Bracken? All right, then that would be it. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you, Ed. Second, Mike, thank you. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Get home safely. Thank you, everyone, for coming. See you next month.